The kingdom was frozen in more than just winter. After Uther Pendragon's death, England became a land of locked doors and fortified walls. The great lords, who should have been its protectors, turned their castles inward, each one a small kingdom warily eyeing the next across silent, snow-covered fields. The roads grew dangerous, and the people waited, their breath misting in the cold air, for a stability that seemed like a forgotten dream. It was a nation holding its breath. And then, in a London churchyard, something impossible appeared. A great stone, and fixed within it, an anvil. And through that anvil, a sword was thrust, its blade buried deep. The weapon itself was magnificent, but the words engraved upon it in letters of gold were what truly captured the desperate imagination of the realm. Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king, born of all England. This was no prize for the strongest knight. The sword first appears in the writings of Robert de Boron, who framed it not as a test of might, but as a divine verdict. It was a promise of a king, yet it revealed none. And while the powerful strained and failed, the true heir was unaware of his destiny. A boy, known simply as Wart, living in the humble castle of Sir Ector. Far from the political anxieties of London, in the Forest Sauvage, life at Sir Ector's castle followed the simple, honest rhythms of the seasons. Here, the boy Arthur grew up known to all as Wart. He was the foster brother to Sir Ector's son, Kay, and though he was treated with kindness, his position was clear. He was the spare, the companion, the one who would one day serve as squire to the heir. There was no hint of royalty in his days, which were filled with the mundane tasks of castle life and the strange, subtle lessons of his tutor, Merlin. Merlin did not present himself as a grand magician. He was a quiet, often bemusing presence, a guide who prepared Arthur not with spells and incantations, but with wisdom. He taught through observation, through turning the boy into a fish to understand the flow of water, or a hawk to comprehend the perspective of the skies. These were not lessons in power, but in empathy and the natural order of things. A quiet preparation for a burden Merlin knew the boy would one day carry. Arthur's relationship with Kay was a bond forged in childhood simplicity. He looked up to his older foster brother, and his greatest concerns were practical ones, far removed from the crown. When the tournament in London was announced, the journey there was a revelation. They traveled along high ridges, looking down upon a landscape of stark beauty and deep isolation. Below them stretched desolate marshes, where the snowy reeds sighed and the ice crackled under cold, red sunsets. They passed through towns that were little more than clearings in the immense, silent forests. The great branches of ancient trees weighted down with white. The journey painted a picture of an England waiting, a land in need of a steady hand. Arthur, on his humble palfrey, was merely a boy caught up in the excitement, his only thought to support Kay in his first tournament. The contrast could not have been greater, the innocent, practical boy and the fractured kingdom yearning for a king. The tournament field was a burst of color against the white world, a spectacle of scarlet grandstands and silk pavilions flapping in the sharp wind. But for Kay, it was a trial of nerves. On the cusp of his first joust, he discovered he had forgotten his sword. In a panic, he turned to his squire. "Wart, ride back to the inn and fetch my sword. Be quick." There was no malice in the command, only the frantic anxiety of a young knight, but it cemented the distance between them, the knight on his great charger, and the foster brother sent on an errand. Arthur rode back through the crowded streets, only to find the inn locked and deserted. Everyone had gone to the tournament. Standing there, tasked with an impossible duty, he made a simple, practical decision. He remembered the sword in the churchyard, the one he had thought was a war memorial. It would have to do. He arrived at the quiet square, the noise of the distant crowd just a murmur. The atmosphere was strangely still. The air carried the faint, sweet scent of briar, and a distant sound, like choral music, seemed to weave through the clear winter light. He approached the stone. He saw the jewels on the pommel flash and the golden letters, though he did not read them. His motive was pure and simple. His brother needed a sword. He took hold of the hilt. It did not feel like a test of strength. It felt like an act of rightness. The sword slid free from the stone as if it were welcoming its master, smooth and effortless. There was no great strain, only a sense of completion. In that quiet churchyard, surrounded by an almost ethereal peace, a kingdom was claimed not by force, but by innocence. He delivered the sword to Kay, who recognized it immediately. Kay's ambition flared for a moment, but it quickly died when faced with his father's calm, questioning gaze. He confessed the truth. They returned to the church, where Sir Ector, with a heart full of awe and sorrow, made Arthur return the sword to the stone. Neither he nor Kay could move it, but Arthur, again, pulled it free. It was in this moment of undeniable truth that Sir Ector knelt, revealing the secret he had kept for so long. Arthur was not his son by blood, but a child entrusted to him by Merlin, born of Uther Pendragon. The boy, who wasn't a prince, discovered he was the king the land had been waiting for. The coronation at Pentecost was not an ending, but the beginning of a burden. The realm, so long fractured, now watched as the boy they called Wart was anointed King Arthur. Many of the great barons, who had scoffed at the idea of a beardless boy from an obscure castle, finally bowed their heads. They had seen the miracle repeated at Christmas, Candlemas, and Easter, the sword yielding only to his hand. It was a divine verdict they could no longer dispute. Arthur's first acts as king revealed the character forged in Sir Ector's humble halls. He began to mend the kingdom's wounds, returning lands that had been unjustly seized and establishing a rule of law instead of might. True to his word, he appointed his foster brother Kay as Seneschal of England, turning a boyhood loyalty into a cornerstone of his court. This moment, as recorded by Mallory, established the pattern of Arthur's reign. Not conquest, but the restoration of order and mercy after years of chaos. And as the celebrations began, Merlin's final words hung in the air, not as a threat, but as a quiet acknowledgement of the glorious doom Arthur now carried, the immense weight of the crown he had pulled from the stone. So the kingdom began to thaw under its rightful king, a ruler chosen not by strength, but by a deeper, simpler rightness. The enduring mystery of the sword reminds us that true leadership is born from integrity, not force, a quiet truth from a winter's tale, waiting to be remembered. May you find your own moments of quiet rightness.